AITA for not letting my husband take our toddler to a remote island cabin. My husband, 41M, wants to take our toddler son, 2.5M, to his remote Canadian cottage without me. This cottage is in another country. It's in Canada. We are from the US. So on top of it being a 4.5-hour flight away, it requires a 3-hour drive and then a 30-plus minute ferry ride. As the cottage is located on an island that is only accessible by boat. Last time we stayed at the cottage, there was no hot shower water for the entire 5 days. Before that, I was exposed to bats in the sleeping room and had to drive to New York to get vaccinated for rabies. Before that trip, we lost power and had no hot water and I had food poisoning. The water is unfiltered from the lake. It's always something going wrong and I'm just so sick of it. I told him I'd stay for 23 nights next year. But I don't want to stay 5 nights again. It's also very difficult with a toddler who never sleeps through the night. This cottage means a lot to my husband. He has fond memories of being there with his family and friends when growing up. But it has always been a source of intense anxiety and discomfort for me. From the bugs, to the bats, to the lack of basic amenities. We often lose power or hot water. I just always get stressed and dread being there. Every single year I dread it. My husband knows this and has been working on fixing up the cottage. But it's just very uncomfortable for me and he knows this. I have put up with it for years but I'm tired and want to limit how long I will stay there in the future. Now he is threatening to take our 2.5-year-old son there for a week plus without me. Which I find unacceptable. I have never threatened to take our son anywhere without his consent. Much less to another country. Our son is afraid of flies. Screams and cries whenever they get near. And doesn't sleep through the night. I don't think he will enjoy this trip that he's too young to consent to. Especially with his mom gone. AITA for telling my husband that I won't allow him to take my son to a different country. Without my consent? NTA. This isn't about different likes and dislikes. This is about safety issues. Bats that bite you in the night requiring that you drive to New York for rabies shots. Yikes. Untreated water that causes food poisoning. This is not a safe place for a 2.5-year-old. Period. If your husband wants to make this the family getaway every year, then he needs to get off his butt and put some energy into fixing the place up first, so he needs to fix the water situation. And if the water that comes into the house can't be made safe, then he needs to ensure there is enough bottled water for everyone to use. He needs to get the cabin completely sealed up so that no bats can get in. If he says that's impossible, then he can go there on his own and be a wild grizzly mountain man. But it's not a safe place for wife and toddler. Sorry. Dude. WTF? I would make a list of what needs fixing at the cottage. And ask him to make the repairs or pay someone to make the repairs, and once the cabin is safe for human habitation, then you and your son will go spend time there. Not before. NTA if there is a legitimate health concern. Unfiltered water. No heat without sufficient other heat sources. Rabies. Etc. Then it would be very irresponsible to take a child younger than 5 there for an extended period. Especially without both parents. Additionally, threatening to take a child somewhere against the wishes of the other parent is a dickish thing to do without extreme extenuating circumstances. I wanted to is not extreme extenuating circumstances. That being said, if he really wants to go, and you would be willing to for a short period, I would advise treating it more like a camping trip. Bringing extra heaters, sleeping bags, backup power, propane stove, etc. And possibly staying in a hotel with the kiddo for a day or two, flying out later so he can get there and clean out any pest creatures first. This is clearly important to him. So it's a good idea to be flexible. But make it clear that if he tries to take your child out of the country, you're going to have an issue with that. NTA. It's a remote island cabin. If something goes wrong, help is not getting there in time. And Op elsewhere in the comments posts that her husband has ignored issues with their son multiple times, and those issues turned out to be legit after a visit to the doc's office. Therefore, she doesn't fully trust his judgment in situations where something might be going wrong with a kid. I mean, in a general sense, it is assholish to forbid a spouse from doing something. But in this case it's justified, and perhaps is even her duty as a parent. Besides, kids don't really start to form memories that last until sometime after 3. NTA. Not only would your son likely not enjoy it, he certainly won't remember it. You are aware that a minor child is not supposed to leave the U.S. with just one parent without written, notarized consent of the other parent? NTA. The multiple incidences of guests at this cottage needing rabies shots due to contact with bats, the unfiltered water, and the remote location make this appropriate for adults and older kids only. A toddler can't tell an adult if a bat landed on him or accurately describe symptoms of illness. These are legitimate safety concerns. One day your son and husband can spend father-son time in the batty-buggy luxury-free north. But not yet. NTA. WTF is up with your husband threatening to abscond with your child to a remote and potentially dangerous cabin outside of the country? That's like instant divorce words. It's literally illegal for your husband to take your son out of the country without your consent. Maybe let him know that. Anyone that wants to argue the cabin isn't potentially dangerous, spare me. If anything goes wrong, there's no way they're getting any level of medical attention in less than an hour. And the cabin has bats and unclean water. Not a suitable or safe place for a toddler. If there are bats living in the cabin, then bat guano is my #1 concern. It's dangerous for respiratory problems. Beyond rabies, bats also carry other nasty infectious issues. This is a hard no. Let him go alone. Spend the week working to fix the place up. Once it's actually inhabitable, then you can consider it. OMG NTA even a little. I can't believe some of these comments. Bats don't have to be symptomatic to expose humans to rabies. If one even gets in your house, doctors recommend rabies shots, let alone if one actually bites you. And I'm sorry, but lack of potable water would be a full stop no for me if mom got food poisoning from the water. Little guy is that much more susceptible. Plus, when she expresses discomfort with the idea, dad threatens to take him anyway? Insane. Major parenting decisions like this are 2 yeses, 1 no. NTA. I think you are right to be concerned, as it sounds like a lot can go wrong. And traveling with a toddler can be trying at the best of times. It sounds so isolated in case of an emergency. And frankly, if you hate the cabin so much, just stop going. Don't put up with it for 23 days. Just don't go. My dad would take us camping with mother at times. She didn't like camping, but we were older. 5th, 6th grade. Unless one goes camping a lot and knows how to deal with things, I wouldn't take a toddler that young on such a trip. NTA. I would be extremely hesitant about bringing a low so young to such a difficult place to get to and stay at. The cabin must be a very important place for your husband. Is there any way to explain to him that your low is too young to actually participate in the various cabin activities? If he can wait until your kiddo is 6 or 7, he'd be richly rewarded. Plus, is your husband aware of the shenanigans a toddler can get into? I'm talking about unsafe, dangerous, risky stuff. NTA. You not liking the place aside, Why would your husband want to take a tiny tot that doesn't sleep through the night there? Sounds miserable. I know he is excited to share this cabin and memories with his kid, but he is just too young right now. I had a very similar story to this actually. A friend of our family has a similar cabin on a lake in Canada. On an island. Can only get there by boat. Hot water is a maybe along with electricity. My father, younger sister and I went with them one summer. I was in second maybe third grade. I don't know because I remember very little about the trip. Even with the help of photographs, I just do not have many concrete memories of the place, and what I do have might be made up. I know I had a good time. Milk in a bag was so odd to my American ways. I remember the leeches on my legs from the lake and how bitter cold the water was even in summer. But I don't remember much more than smells, pine trees, or sensations. Freezing cold water seeping through my tiny wetsuit. And I wasn't 2.5 years old. It would just be a waste of time and energy, and your husband would probably not enjoy himself as much as he thinks. I just want to ask, what would the difference be if he was in Canada versus the other side of the US? If your kid has never been so much as camping overnight, then a week effectively camping in a cottage in the middle of nowhere is unlikely to be a great introduction. But for people in a relationship, you two don't seem to be doing very much talking to each other. So I'll call you Esh. Laughs in Alaskan. You're both the aw. This seems very strange and I feel like there's a lot of info missing. How did we go from, I hate the cabin, to, he's threatening to take the toddler to the cabin? Info. This feels very one-sided. Is it in Muskoka? If not, your complaints are valid. If it is, go with him and watch your kid so he can enjoy the cottage or sell it. So stupid to be afraid of wilderness. Also, Canadian hospitals would have vaccinated you. There was no need to go to New York unless you were closer to the border than you were a Canadian hospital. Sounds like you're too high maintenance for your husband's hobbies. Esh. When will you let your husband take his son to the cabin? NTA for having reservations about the trip. Just one adult and a toddler. I can understand exactly what you describe, as my mom just recently sold her family cabin in Canada. Remote access by water only. We had to bring in potable water as well as food. Frequently had power outages, and where you have bats, we had mice. No running hot water. I used a camping shower with cold water, and we heated some on the stove for my daughter's baths. There is a co-op run electrical line around the lake. The bats are a concern, as is toddler safety with just one person to watch him. He's near water, and presumably your husband would have to cook, use the bathroom, and sleep. It will get tiring for one person dealing with the interrupted sleep issues with no one to spell them, which at your home might not be as much an issue because of modern doors, locks, and amenities such as child gates. If there is a medical issue, say the child gets hurt or bitten, is there help within a reasonable distance? We took our daughter to the cabin starting at about 5. She wore a life jacket whenever outside. No beaches, just deep glacial lakes. And we put a lock high up on our bedroom door so that she couldn't get out while we were sleeping. I shared a room with her. I can empathize with your concerns surrounding the age of your son, the length of time, and the fact it would be just the two of them. It could be the start of some memorable times for your child, but I personally would rather go with both parents and begin with a short stay. Does your son have a passport? I think you need to have more discussions about the logistics of this proposed trip, not just walking down memory lane, just to stave off possible comments. I'm not saying the father would be any less competent than the mother. I have had a toddler and one person in a rustic setting with a toddler. It's more difficult to keep track of them at all times. I am assuming that it's not childproofed the way I would imagine their home is. I would let him take the toddler because after a few days and nights of screaming he won't rush to do. Itagsin. Who in the US or Canada says sleeping room?
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Ericast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.